Women face all sorts of challenges in the workplace. Problems ranging from sexism and sexual harassment to promotion bias have gradually begun to get more traction in the media's coverage of these issues. But what kind of language do people use when discussing women in the workplace? On social media, two major groups that are discussing women in the workplace are professional organizations and individuals.
To understand the language these groups use, we'll be utilizing a method of linguistic analysis called critical discourse analysis. CDA, as described in How to Do Critical Discourse Analysis by David Mashin and Andrea Mayer, is a way to think about language that has a special focus on what ideologies and different power dynamics are contained in different texts. CDA takes commonly accepted phrases and rhetoric, unpacks them, and makes conclusions based off of them. This information then contributes to activist causes and discussions. Most of the language that both groups use when discussing women in the workplace has positive intentions, but the precise way in which the language is manipulated varies between the groups. The two types of language devices most frequently used by both professional groups and individuals are overlexicalization and metaphor, terms which we will later define. Even though both professional groups and individuals use these devices, each group takes a different approach to how they employ these devices.
Overlexicalization is the overuse of words to define or enhance a concept. In our analysis of women in the workplace on Facebook and Twitter, we found numerous instances of overlexicalization, both with professional groups and individuals. In both realms, when speaking about careers, words such as woman and girl are often added to point out that the person who holds the job in question is a woman or a girl. For example, a commonly tweeted article about women in science is called "How Female Scientists Can Confront Gender Bias in the Workplace."
People that do not hold a platform for advancing or reducing women's rights in the workplace will be called individual commentators from this point on. These people can range from you or I all the way to Barack Obama and President Trump. These people do not possess an astounding knowledge or background in the research of gender bias in the workplace. However, this does not make their opinions any less valid. We found individual comments underneath news articles and videos as well as individual posts by searching through threads on Facebook and Twitter. An individual found on Twitter by the name of Lee Berger retweeted the previously mentioned article on women in science, adding his own additional opinion stating, quote, "What if we all wore our academic robes to lectures in support of great female academics like Holly Dunsworth? Would that bring about change?" End quote. One can see that Mr. Berger appears to endorse female empowerment and wants to see positive change in the workplace for women. This is notable by his use of the words support and great. However, we can see that Berger used overlexicalization by stating great female academics. It is important to note that this technique is not necessarily a bad thing, and in this case appears to be used by the individual to narrow the scope down on who exactly he wants to support and see positive change effect.
Overlexicalization is common among individuals on Twitter when discussing women in the workplace. When a person's gender is indicated by the speaker, the person's gender becomes connected to the cause of the sentence. In response to a news article about a female officer who used fatal force seemingly without cause, conservative media personality Ann Coulter tweeted, "Another example of why there shouldn't be girl cops. Lacking the strength of a man, girls go straight to fatal force." The overuse of gender terms in this tweet reveals the ideology behind it. Coulter's use of girl instead of woman, combined with her use of man to distinguish between girl and man, emphasizes the incompetency she sees in women cops, or as she would put it, girls. In another example of overlexicalization, conservative media personality Tomi Lahren use of gendered language seems to blame the failure of a security guard to do her job on the fact that she's a woman. Lahren's tweet reads, "A police officer begged a female security guard to put down her cell phone and to help subdue a robbery suspect in Houston. And what did she do? Nothing." The addition of the word female to describe the security guard contributes nothing to the audience's interpretation of the incident, other than that the security guard is female. Had the security guard been male, he likely would have been referred to as just a security guard. Singling out the gender of the security guard implies that the security guard failed at her job because she's a woman, not because she's an incompetent security guard. The use of over-lexicalization to emphasize a worker's female status indicates an ideology that points out women and thereby isolates them as a group separate from their male counterparts.
On Twitter, some professional accounts focused on women's issues mention specific words in nearly every tweet. For our purposes, professionals will be any organized group meant to promote a specific issue. One of these, an account dedicated to highlighting successful businesswomen and welcoming businesses, called Where Women Work, has a tweet about an Amazon executive that calls her one of the most powerful female engineers. In this case, Where Women Work is placing emphasis on the female status of the engineer, despite the fact that a female engineer is the same thing as just an engineer without the overemphasis. That's over-lexicalization, but it suits the purposes of the account by dovetailing with its efforts to promote professional women. This is a common pattern. Their adjectives match their stated objective. This goes up a level in a tweet coming from UN Women, which is the branch of the United Nations focused on women's issues. In it, a new official describes herself as the first Latin American Caribbean woman to lead the General Assembly. This is a more noticeable example and lets us know what else unnecessary emphasis on gender or other identifiers can do, especially for organizations that would like to look diverse and global. That women's descriptors are all literally true, of course, but using all of them causes an image of progressiveness, diversity, and inclusion for the UN. That's the way over-lexicalization works for groups with specific agendas.
Metaphors take two completely different subjects and compare them. An example of this is the use of imagery and descriptions of war when discussing politics. Words like battle and fight when talking about debates are examples of where war metaphors can be used.
Many of the individual posts analyzed through a warlike metaphorical lens used similar verbiage in their commentary. Several words that appeared often include confronting, navigating, fighting, and battling. The use of these words creates an imagery of the offensive side of war, where women must fight both men and the higher-ups in order to have equality in their place of work, and to even be considered for hire in the first place. The message that these strong verbs as word choices send enhances the idea that women are not, even to begin with, on a same playing field as their male counterparts when it comes to obtaining and maintaining a job. It appears that women must fight harder than other prospective employees to stand out and be taken seriously. Then, when a woman does obtain a job, to maintain it, she needs to continue to fight in order to prove that her ideas, thoughts, and discoveries are valid.
Numerous individuals, especially those in political positions of power, use the metaphor of protecting women in the workplace. This metaphor usage is closer to those of the professional groups we found. This is likely because these individuals are people like politicians who are closely affiliated with a professional organization, such as a political party. Oftentimes, this metaphor is used with good intentions, but it can actually inhibit the original intent of the metaphor, which is to support women's rights. A quote from Barack Obama posted by Time's Up on Twitter uses phrases like, "Women are more vulnerable in the workplace," with the key term here being vulnerable, and "protect women in the workplace," with the key term in this phrase being protect. Similarly, politician Maria Monsef tweeted, "Looking forward to today's at Women in the World, and speaking about the ways our government is working to break down barriers for women in the workplace." This phrasing doesn't directly use the word protection, but the ideology that women must be saved by a more powerful entity, in this case, the government, remains the same. In a video posted on Twitter, Megyn Kelly calls out this protection metaphor, saying, "Too many of us have just moved on and haven't spent the energy to take this beyond protecting women in the workplace and getting to the root of the problem, which is women do not have equal power." The intent behind protecting women in the workplace is noble, but it adheres to the old-fashioned ideology that women must be protected by those with more power, who are often men. As Kelly points out, the protection metaphor fails to address the entirety of the issue, which is that women need to be empowered to establish equality in the workplace, not protected from those who don't want them to have equal power.
The tweet itself states, if you are a woman taking a career break, then it is necessary to keep yourself equipped to combat many evils like low self-esteem, self-pity, and peer pressure that would pull you down. Here's how. These professionals say that women need to be equipped with what is necessary to combat many evils. This is a perfect battle metaphor that discusses protecting women. This company argues a desire to protect women by equipping them with resources so that they will be able to protect themselves. The professionals, the American Society of Association Executives, tweeted, "From Hollywood to the halls of Congress, the safety of women in the workplace has taken center stage. Learn how to protect yourself and others at the Women Executives Forum on October 29th. Immediately in this tweet, it's made apparent that the topic is about protecting women. The Society addresses the safety of women at work and the importance of it being center stage. Having both safety of women at work and learning how to protect yourself are the focal points to this group. This furthers ideologies of women being promoted in the workplace and continues to do this through the protection metaphor that professionals often adopt. The language doesn't equip women with the ability to fight, but rather wants to teach them and others how to be safe. All provided professionals use word choices like combat and protect to describe their views of women at work. These metaphors are supposed to invoke a feeling of sympathy for women at work and to try to imply that the reader that women are in danger of something. The professionals imply that women need to be protected.
Overall, individuals tend to take a more battle-oriented outlook with their use of metaphor. The use of over-lexicalization with the individual is designed to present women as a powerful force or phenomena in the work environment. Groups, on the other hand, are taking a more conservative approach in terms of strength and empowering. Organizations will use metaphor to show the need we push as a society to protect women and guard them in the workplace, taking on the battle metaphor in a more defensive stance. The use of over-lexicalization is meant to show that women are capable of the same jobs, but seems to be used improperly at times to emphasize women when it doesn't necessarily need to be. The difference in the use of these language devices takes on a loud and fighting stance for the individual and a quiet and protective demeanor for the organization.
Using critical discourse analysis to examine language exposes the ideology of individuals or organizations who have spoken. For example, our examination of individuals' usage of over-lexicalization often emphasizes a worker's female status, thereby making men to be the normalized gender to occupy a job position.
The methods we've analyzed here are not all created equal. If all participants can respectfully and clearly communicate the issue at hand, a good discussion is born. However, some of the techniques we looked at make for irresponsible discussion, even from people who mean well. The metaphors, for example, while useful for communicating complicated topics with little effort, often have unfortunate implications. The protection metaphor, which is especially prevalent coming from well-meaning men, has the implication that women are fragile, delicate, and need to be protected by someone outside themselves. The fight metaphor, also noted in these discussions, can have some of the same negative connotations. It also neglects to name who exactly women are fighting against. These metaphors don't help a discourse become unbiased in the way that best lets people make ethical decisions. Leaving aside your initial points and considering all others that may be involved in the problem, like the veil of ignorance theory, cannot be possible if the language someone is using is already making neutrality a pipe dream. If a discussion starts with one party saying women and another saying girls, that discussion has already hit a roadblock in being fair and ethical. It's best to use the clearest and least ideology-driven language possible to have a discussion with all involved parties. This is not always possible, of course. By its nature, the discussion is ideologically charged. However, it doesn't need to be so in a way that inhibits ethical discussion and stops people before they even begin.